I don't know what you're talking about. But. All right, you guys have a quiz. I guess it's more like a quiz on Monday. A.2 and A.3, the first two sections. And so you want to prepare for that. It can be a tricky test, and I don't want to scare you. I'm going to tell you ahead of time. It's my average grade last semester on my first test was a 65 or something like that. Okay, so the question is, but why? What happened?
Nobody studied.
So it actually, I will say studying may be a problem, but really it comes down to you learning how I test, okay? It's pretty typical that the first test in any math class is not usually so stellar. And a lot of that really just has to do with because you've never seen how I test, right? So right now I can tell you that it's going to be a multiple choice test, but you have to show work, you have to justify, and if you get no work, you get no credit, regardless of whether or not you bubbled the correct answer, okay? So that's fine, but the problem is that if for the past 3 years you're a notorious negative dropper, you just drop those negative signs left and right, forget about them, you don't pay attention to them, then you're going to get killed on my tests every time, okay? And that's because I know that you drop negatives. And guess what? It's one of the answers, okay? And so along with that, the other thing that I do a couple times on every test is have the answer choice none of these. Where A, B, C, and D are all answers, and all of those answers are answers where I know students make this mistake. So if you do that mistake, that's your answer. And if you do this mistake, that's your answer. And if you do that mistake, that's your answer. And so not only do you go through the work and you're like, yes, I got the right answer, there it is, B. But now I'm going to be like, wait a minute, you can't. Are you really? I mean, now the question is, are you 100% confident that you did that perfectly? All right? So now, so listen up. This is important. The question changes now. It's not whether you can do the math now. The question is now, how do you verify your answer? So it changes the question. Not only do you need to know the math, but more importantly, I need you to know how to check your answer. So lots of ways to do that. Plug it in. Finding an intersection. Anytime I use the graphing calculator to show you stuff, which we'll go again today, all right? So we'll talk about. Check your answers, ladies and gentlemen. Figure out how to use your calculator, okay? It's not about how to do the math. It's how to prove you did it correctly, okay? So it's a very different test. So I don't want you to be surprised when you don't get the A you're used to. It is possible, but you should also know that there will be quiz corrections. You'll be able to get a few points back on it. But really, the first time through counts. I did change it a little bit from last year, so it'll probably be a little bit better than it was last year. But but don't be surprised if your grade starts out a little bit lower than it normally would. We have the whole rest of the semester to bring your grade up, and by the end of the semester, we do so many tests that it's not going to make a difference. Plus, there's extra credit this year. How about that? You can have that this year. Yay! All right. Oh, so studying. All right. So while you're writing down the directions here, factor, sum, or difference of cubes, the other thing I wanted to say is to prepare for your test on Monday, I have already posted an extra credit review. It is posted in the class website. I did send out an email, but a couple of them got sent back because the file size was too big. So I had attached a whole bunch of photos and all that stuff. So that just the mail message just got too big. So know that might have happened. But please, please, please check the class website under announcements for that announcement about the extra credit.
So it should be in our.
You'll see a message in messages, but it's also if you click the class website button, change it to good now, and then under announcements, you'll see a bunch of photos and a list of problems to do. Yes. All right, here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Factoring sum or difference of cubes. Bless you. All right, ladies and gentlemen, sum or difference of cubes is just a pattern. I don't usually have you memorize stuff, but this is the easiest thing to do right now is just to memorize some patterns. So sum or difference of cubes, we have two examples. What would this one be called? Difference of cubes, sure. Why do we know it's difference of cubes? Yeah, it's subtraction. And then this one would be sum of cubes. Okay. And why is it a cube?
Because 4 times 4.
Oh, because, yeah, it's x being cubed and also 4 being cubed. Very good. What about here? What's being cubed? 2x is being cubed and 3 is being cubed. Okay, good. Just making sure we all get that. Okay, good. Now, the way that I do sum and difference of cubes is very bizarre. The only thing I remember is what the sign order is. The signs. These are going to factor into a small bubble and a big bubble. Both of them, same way. Small bubble, big bubble. For difference of cubes, the signs go minus, plus, plus. That's what I remember. All right, do you remember that? Yeah, okay. All right, so the signs go minus, plus, plus. Yep, that's right, I heard it. Over here, you got a small bubble and big bubble. This is sum of cubes. How do the signs go? Plus, minus, plus. The nice thing is that once you set up the signs, you don't have to worry about positives or negatives now. Doesn't matter. Doesn't change anything. So we can basically ignore all the signs. And then in the small bubble, we take our little cube roots. So the root here we're going to pop in is the x. And what's the root of 64? 4. So we put our little 4 in there. And once you get those little roots in, then the pattern is the same for both of them. We take the first term and we square it. So x being squared is x squared. You multiply the terms for the middle, 4x. And again, you get to ignore the signs because we already took care of it. And then you square the last term and get 16. And that's it. Square the first, multiply in the middle, square the last. So let's do this other one. Little harder, but the same exact concept. Again, the signs are either minus, plus, plus, or plus, minus, plus, based on what they gave. And I'm going to ask you, what's the root here of my first term? 2x. And the root of that second term? 3. And we want to square the first. What is that? 2x. 4x squared. 2x times 2x is 4x squared. Multiply in the middle. 6x. And square the last thing. 9. You're really quick talking today there, Nick.
You came and sat down.
Okay. Someone had a Red Bull.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right.
Monster and a Red Bull.
Okay. So the question is, yay, I factored it. How do you prove you did it correctly? Okay, so to prove it, you could multiply it out, right? You could multiply these together and prove that you get back to where you started. That's certainly one way you could do it. What's the less computationally challenging? Graph it. When in doubt, graph it out is my favorite saying. So if you wanted to check, now this is a little bit hard to check just because of the window issue, but it's possible that you could put the original equation in y1 and your alternate form in y2. And what should they see? What should you see? One graph, one picture, graphed on top of itself, okay? They should be identical graphically because these are supposed to be equivalent. They're supposed to be equal to one another. So when in doubt, graph it out. Okay. All right, so example 2. You guys have to learn how to use your calculator, so remember, you can use the calculator on Monday.
Yes.
Okay? Get one. I have 2, but all right, example 2. Factor. Factoring means to put it into bubble form. Lots and lots of bubbles. But I'm always going to remind you to look for the GCF first. Because if you can reduce those numbers, then the problem is always going to be slightly easier to factor. Okay? Now, letter A is not, shall we say, in standard form. Is it possible for you to put it in standard form and then factor? Absolutely. But it's not necessary, so I'm going to factor it as it is because I want you to see that you can do it. So, first of all, is there a GCF?
2. Yes.
Yes, a 2. So I'm going to undistribute that 2. Remember, you don't divide it away. This is not an equation. It doesn't disappear. All right? But we can relocate that 2. So we can undistribute the 2. And if I take out a 2 from every single term, what's left behind? 20 minus y squared. Very good. All right. And so now my numbers are much smaller. I'm going to now double bubble that trinomial. And I'm going to figure out how to factor that. Now, when I factor, I do the same method every single time, and it works wonderfully. I simply ask myself, first times first is supposed to be the first thing. First times first, and you multiply, right? When you're foiling together, right? So first times first is supposed to give you the first thing. What times what is 20? 4 times 5, is that the only option? No, you could do 10 and 2 or 20 and 1. 4 and 5 is a great start. So I'm going to do 5 and 4. And then I also know when I FOIL that last times last is supposed to be this last thing. So what times what is negative y squared? Negative y and positive y. So I'm going to go ahead and put my negative y in and my positive y in. So I've already figured out the first and the last term. What do I need to verify? The middle. This middle y, where does that middle term come from? The outer and inner product when you FOIL. Outsides and insides. So I like to tell my students, check the rainbow. All right? You can write on top of the bottom. Check the rainbow. And every time I think that, I picture Skittles commercials in my head. But so if you check the rainbow, 5 times y is 5y. Negative y times 4 is negative 4y. Did we do it correctly? No. What did I get? Positive y. I had the wrong sign all I need to do is switch my signs. Positive y, negative y. So now I see a negative 5y, positive 4y. When you check the rainbow. Again, how do you know if you did this correctly? You could graph it, absolutely. You could graph this one and you could graph the original, absolutely. Could you multiply together and work it out? Sure, you could do the math. You could actually FOIL these together, distribute into 2, and you'll get back to where you started. Okay. Let's practice another one. Negative 9z squared plus 3z plus 2. Does this have a GCF?
Yes.
Yes. What does it have?
Negative.
A negative 1. I hate when I have a leading negative. I think it just makes it harder to factor. You can do it. So anytime I have a leading negative, I'm always going to factor that out. So if I factor out a negative 1, what's left behind? 9z squared minus 3z minus 2. All right. And now I'm going to double bubble. Again, trying to factor that trinomial, my same process works every time. What times what is 9z squared? 3z and 3z. Is that the only option?
No.
No, you could have chosen 9 and 1, 9z and 1z. 1z, cute. Okay. All right. And then last times last is supposed to be the last term. What times what is negative 2? Negative 2 and positive 1. Negative 2 and positive 1. And that's the only choice, right? That's it, right? 2 is prime. Negative 2 and positive 1. How do I know if I did it right? Rainbow. Check the rainbow. Check the rainbow. When I multiply 3z times 1, I get 3z. Negative 2 times 3z is negative 6z. And when you combine those, do we get our middle term? Yes, we do. So I'm 100% confident I got that correct. Which line? I'm looking at here. I have to get a negative 2. And so negative 2, it's either negative 1 times 2 or negative 2 times positive 1. Signs have to be different. I just always automatically put the sign I need with the larger number. I guess maybe I did that. I don't know.
That was positive 2.
When I took out, so positive 2 would give you a positive 3z result. So the question was, I thought it was 3z plus 2 times 3z minus 1. If we check this, I'd have a negative 3z and a positive 6z. And when you add those together, you don't get that negative 3z that we're looking for.
Oh,
Okay. Were you looking at the wrong 3z? Yeah. You got to find that one, and the red one. Okay. So that one didn't work. Okay. All right. Are we on the same page so far?
Yes.
Okay. All right. This is the last thing. How many of you have done factor by grouping? Oh, more
that's my favorite.
mysteries. That's very good. Okay, very good.
That's my favorite one.
Okay. Factor by grouping. How many terms do you see? 4 terms. Factor by grouping works a lot. In fact, it actually works anytime you have an even number of terms. In a while, you guys will get a worksheet where there's something you have to factor and solve it. It has 6 terms. And you can use factor by grouping, and it's totally cool. Factor by grouping is really, really useful. To do factor by grouping, first you're gonna part the Red Sea, split those terms in half. Split those terms in half, and basically the process is find the GCF over and over and over again. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at these first two terms, and I'm going to say to you, what is their greatest common factor?
2.
A 2. So I'm going to take a 2 out of those two terms. What's left behind? 3 plus x. Very good. Now I'm going to do the same thing with these last two terms, and you'll notice how my sign is still attached here. What's the GCF of those last two terms? Negative 3x to the third. Very good. All right.
Nope, just
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you. Negative x to the third. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry about that. So I'm going to take out a negative x to the third. And when I take out that negative x cubed from each term, what's left behind? 3 plus x. Now we started with 4 terms. How many terms do we have now? 2 terms. Very good. 1, 2. And now when I'm going to say, hey, what's the GCF again? Yeah, they both have a 3 plus x that we can pull out in front. My word. Can't write right now. There we go. And when I take out, factor out that 3 plus x, what's left behind? 2 minus x cubed. All right. Some joke is going on, and I am out of the loop.
Put her in the loop.
Okay. Again, how can you check to see if you've got it right? Yeah, that's the easy way. Y1, Y2, and they should match. Okay? Now that does get a little complicated. Sometimes you can't view it. You can't see it in the window, in the normal window. But it's a good start. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you get to work on Fast Practice 7.